where my people roam free. Yeah, but here at the gaming con, no one gives a shit like they do at...
I was gonna kick in my dance. I was just like, geez, we were seriously expecting like 4 people to show up. I mean,
Who are you again?
Exactly. That's like, we got 5 minutes of fame, so we're gonna really soak this thing in for 2 hours. Okay, that's exactly what it is.
You're the guys who made Call of Duty.
What's that? Well, we're the Call of Duty team, and we're gonna kind of show you guys what we're working on for the next generation games called the N64.
That explains everything.
It's got dots.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, I know what you guys came here for. I know everyone's gonna yell at the same time, kind of like, "Oh, Turok!" That's right. And it's kind of really cool that you guys see as many of you guys came out for our event. My name is Michael Daubert. I was a CG artist at Iguana Entertainment for 10 years. 10 years at a game industry these days is really an anomaly, because usually a game development team, you come in, you got 3 years into the game, hey, guess what, the game didn't do as well, and you're laid off, and you're working at McDonald's, and you look for the next game again. But this team that we put together right here, I'm really proud to be able to stand up here with these guys, because these guys right here, it's pretty amazing the creativity and the knowledge and the groundbreaking technology that came out of this group, and the other group that couldn't be here, of course, from the Iguana team, kind of revolutionized the way we see gaming these days. And I'm not here to toot our own horn, but the early days of the N64 development, even the Saturn development, what Iguana Entertainment created really set forth kind of like where we are today and what we're playing these days. So my back history, like I said, I've been in the industry with Iguana Entertainment 10 years. We've all been in the industry close to 18 to 20 years. I was on Turok Rage Wars, I was on Batman Returns, the stand-up arcade game. I was on South Park Iggy's Wrecking Ball. It's hard to put a title to yourself when you say like, oh hey, I was an animator, I was a programmer. Back during those days, we were kind of like a little bit of everything. So I'm just going to say I was a CG artist, because back then we did concept modeling, texturing, rigging, particles, you name it, we did it out of it. And I'm just going to pass the mic down the line here and kind of let these guys introduce themselves and their past experience, what they did, and where they are now.
Hi, I'm Mark Mackin. I'm a CG artist also. I started at Acclaim Iguana in 1995. I guess, do you want me to go into detail on what games I worked on, or just? Okay, I worked on Quarterback Club. That was my first project. Yay! Turok.
Yeah!
Okay, Turok. I worked a little bit on Turok too, and then after that I moved on to All-Star Baseball, 99, 2000, and 2001. And then after that I got moved over to Turok Rage Wars, which was like a 4-player multiplayer game for N64. I worked on Turok Evolution, which was the PS2 Xbox version of Turok. And then after that, I worked a tiny bit on NBA Jam, and then the last project I worked on was Legends of Wrestling.
Hello? Yeah. My name is Charles Norman. I started at Iguana about 1995. I was there until the doors were closed. I was actually on paternity leave for my second son when my twin brother, we probably should have sat next to each other, but
you guys aren't drunk. There is actually
there is 2. We all look a lot alike, but it's the guy in the green shirt. Yeah, and it may look like we've aged so much since this happened. I actually had this hair when I got hired by Iguana, so it's not an age thing. But I got a call. I was on paternity leave with my second son when my brother called me and said, "Hey, the doors are locked and nobody get in the building." So that was fun times. Find out that the last paycheck was the last paycheck, but it was a lot of fun times. I worked on a quarterback club. Actually, He and I pretty much lived and breathed Quarterback Club from when we were hired for several years. About half my time there was spent as a programmer, about half of it as a producer, and that's it for me.
Hi, my name is Scott Brocker. I started at Iguana 93, 94, something like that. I'm probably going to cuss, so nothing personal. I don't have kids. I don't have kids. I don't, But yeah, I worked on Zero the Kamikaze. Yeah, Zero, Aero the Acro-Bat, a lot of games up through that. Of course, South Park, Batman Forever. A lot of games. Anyway, yeah, it was a lot of fun. It did back then. It was everything. You basically created everything from the characters to the levels to textures, anything. It was all that. What about working on sets?
Yeah, we're doing careers now.
Oh, careers. Right now, I work. Right now, I work.
Scott, where are you dancing?
Yes, I work the pole over at the. I think it's called La Feria or something. No, right now I work from home. I do effects. I started doing effects on South Park, and I've been doing effects ever since.
I can't believe no one cheered for South Park.
The first person shooter South Park. That was the best one. No, Love Shack. No, I said no. No, I'll pass.
Told them not to make that game.
Hi, my name's Steve Bromley. As you can tell, I'm from Texas. Originally, I'm from Middlesbrough, England, and there used to be Iguana UK, and that's how I came across to the States. So I joined Iguana in California back in '93. I was there for 5 weeks, sleeping on somebody's floor. Then we moved over to Austin, Texas. There you go. And I worked on Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel on this machine called the Sega Genesis, which is probably around before any of you guys were born. Called the Mega Drive in England. Is there any English people here?
Mega Drive!
What's that?
Genesis does what Nintendo!
There you go. So after Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel, I worked on this fantastic arcade machine called Batman the Arcade Machine. Yeah, Batman Forever, the arcade machine. And after that, I came on to Turok. I programmed the bosses and all the cinemas, and then I was the lead programmer on Turok 2. And then I did some programming on Turok Rage Wars. Not so loud on that one.
We just lost the Turok fan.
You left.
And anyway, yeah, I became the tech director, and I was hiring for South Park Love Shack. Yeah. Which actually, even though the game wasn't brilliant, it actually started off a lot of young programmers' careers because we hired a lot of junior programmers to do all of the 2D games and everything. So it really wasn't, it was a good thing as well. And then I left Acclaim and Iguana in about 2000. And since then, I've been working for, I'm trying to think here. So we did the PS2, Tribes, Area 51, which we actually got bought out by Midway as well, Inevitable. And then I was solo for 5 years. I did Sega Genesis emulator on the iPhone. And then I am now working for a website company. Isn't that exciting?
Hello everyone, my name is Adam McCarthy. I am, I think, the second most senior person at Iguana. John, at the end there, he's the oldest motherfucker here. I was hired in early 1993 in Sunnyvale, California. I'm an artist. My first game released, we had a bunch of failed starts at Iguana in the early days. My first release was a port of Side Pocket Pool from Genesis to SNES. So Super Nintendo Side Pocket was my first project, and Pirates of Dark Water for Sega Genesis. Yeah. Aero, that was shipped before we left California. Then we moved to Austin. I was an artist and animator on Aero the Acro-Bat 2, and then it was the next 4 or 5 years on. I got the IPA, Deep Elm IPA, and then I was. Thank you so much. This is very important. And then I worked on quarterback club from 95, 96, 97, 98. And then I started on Iggy's Wrecking Balls before, and that's what I was working on when I left. And we were so early in development, I would probably guess that none of my work got on Iggy's Wrecking Balls because it was really early on. So probably the last thing I did there was quarterback club. If any of you guys played quarterback club, I did all the helmets, logos, all that shit in 3D. I was one of the only 3D guys in the art department that was not in ATG. So I was one of the only guys using 3D Studio, and when you guys were using SGI type stuff. So yeah, I did a bunch of 3D football helmets. Also a lot of the animations. If you guys watched the trailer for this convention on the website,
hey Adam, could I just,
calling up on the logo, I did the animation.
Adam, could I just interrupt for a moment? Hey, I'd like to give a big shout out to SGC for providing the drinks, a little bit of social media.
So I left Iguana in '97. So I probably was one of the first people to leave, as well as one of the first people to join. Since then, I went to New World Computing, where I worked on a bunch of the Might and Magic games: Might and Magic 6, Might and Magic 7, Might and Magic 8, Heroes of Might and Magic 3 and 4. And then I left there, did some shit you guys never heard of, and then I worked at EA on the RTS team. I was the animation director on Command & Conquer 3, Red Alert 3, Battlefield 1, Battlefield 2. And then I got laid off at EA and I joined Zynga. So I was at Zynga for 3 years, and I just left to start a startup company. We're going to be doing iPad games and tap. The name of the company is called Tap Zen. We just started. You guys have never heard of us, but we're going to fucking take your money. All right, thank you. I'm done.
Okay, my name's Kevin Norman, and you've seen my twin, so you're aware of that connection. I started at Iguana back in late '94. My brother came in several months later, and immediately came on to Quarterback Club. I worked on Quarterback Club basically to the last version we made when the license was taken from us to be given dedicated to the NFL. But we had one good year, which was where we outsold Madden on the N64. Yes, we did.
We might have more than one good year, but that we did outsell Madden.
We had good years.
On the N64. We had to block them away from having the NFL license to do it.
Yeah, we had to keep them from the NFL license. We had the equivalent license.
Doesn't matter how we did it.
Details, come on.
Well, wait, it came back to Brennan's because then they saw that, they thought this was a good idea, and then Madden went and got the exclusive license after that. They're never going to give it up again. Anyway, I don't know how that worked, but then during that time I also helped develop the sports engine, and then the All-Star Baseball used our sports engine, so I was helping out on All-Star Baseball. I fixed a couple of bugs on Turok at the time, and then went on to, for a while I was managing the core technology group that used the engine that was in the Turok game and others that were getting done. Then my brother wanted to go, when the company shut down, my brother's getting requested to go interview for The Godfather at EA, and suggested I go out with him to interview, and I was asked to come in as the lead engineer on the Sims project, and then that morphed into the Sims 3 project, where I continued as lead engineer for a while, and then we decided we wanted to get back to Austin, and they extended the day where Sims was like going to ship years later, and so we decided to come back in '07, and we've been doing our own company there in Austin ever since Midnight Studios. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I might mention also that EA time period, I was a producer on SimCity products, little SimCity DS, lead producer on those, and I was a senior producer on the Godfather project, which had a lot of people on that project, but go ahead. Yeah.
At Midnight, we've been doing some work and helping some projects. I think we just finished helping on Madden 25th Anniversary Edition that's going to come out later on this year, so cool.
Hey everybody, my name is Neil Glancy. I've been working in the video games industry for about 25 plus years. I've worked on about 6 generations of hardware. The first games I shipped on audio cassette tape, up through everything from Blu-rays and all that kind of stuff. I didn't know I actually needed to bring my resume, but I kind of started off working on Sinclair Spectrum stuff in the UK, like Steve. I'm from the UK. I worked at DMA Design on titles like Lemmings, Walker. I also worked on ideation on GTA with Dave Jones. Then I came to America to work at Iguana, where I was a designer, and I worked on Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel and many other titles. I touched most of the products that the studio produced. South Park, a little bit of Turok stuff, not directly, just kind of helping Dave Dinsby on that. Big shout out to Dave. Dave was a really big part of what made that project special. Iggy's Wrecking Balls, all the other kind of bits and pieces. Moved up to Midway in Chicago, and I was the lead designer there on Stranglehold, the big John Woo game. That was a really interesting experience, to say the least. Then came back down to Austin, where I started my own company called Fun Machine. And I have recently moved to, as of 2 weeks ago, to Certain Affinity, where I'm leading their creative direction in the digital division. So I'm responsible for all creative product direction within XBLA, PSN, social, mobile, and Steam.
I'm Peter Franco. I started in Iguana in 1998 on some sports titles, on NHL Breakaway 99, which was, or maybe it was 98 at the time, I guess. Not the most glamorous way to jump in, but it was my first gig out of school. And from there, touched the tail end of the Turok franchise, Turok Rage Wars, Turok 3. I learned a lot on those titles. It was an interesting time because there were no classes to take to get you ready for developing art and video games. There's very little. We were discovering things as we, day-to-day basis. So I learned everything there that I took with me later on in my career. What else? We did some Vex, I think, while we were there. Some more hockey titles. Then from there went to a company called Inevitable, similar to Steve down there, that was acquired by Midway. Did some art direction on Area 51 on the PS2, Black Sites. After that, started my own thing as well. There's a really cool iPhone game I recommend everyone go get because it supports a great indie artist from Austin, Texas called Hi, How Are You? Daniel Johnston. He's a really cool guy. Then Dungeon Overlord for Facebook, and I've shifted into Zynga space, so I'm now in the casual game market. I'm doing art direction for them. Anyway, that's where I'm at right now.
Hi, I'm John Carlson. So let's see, back when I was 17, I was growing up in Sunnyvale, California, and it was a really exciting time for me back then because I saw these funny little companies pop up around me. And when I was 17, I got a summer job working at this little company you might have heard of called Atari. Yes, I'm old. I was actually their youngest employee at the time. And so, let's see, a couple of years later, I was working for Atari's founder, Nolan Bushnell, spent a year working as a contractor for him. A couple of years later, I found myself at a games company called Mediagenic. Anyone heard of that one? Okay. Well, Mediagenic is what you get when you combine Activision and Infocom. So those two big brands together. When I was working at Mediagenic toward the end there, I started doing some moonlighting for the guy that became our president over at Iguana Entertainment. Did some contract work there. Ultimately became one of the founders of Iguana Entertainment. Was there for 2.5 years as a contractor, 2.5 years as an employee, and then after Iguana was sold to Acclaim Entertainment, they transferred me out to their new coin-operated division out in Mountain View, California, and that lasted about 6.5 weeks for me. And then spent some time outside of the game industry, got back in a few years back, taught a few classes in game scripting at Austin Community College.
Yeah!
All righty, got a student here. Huh? Excellent. Hey, you guys look familiar. Most recently, I spent just over a year and a half working for Sony Computer Entertainment, developing a handheld PlayStation game, originally for the Brazilian market, as well as Russia, India, China, that got canceled. It will never see the light of day. And shortly after that was laid off, and most recently been working for Kevin and Charles at Midnight Studios.
Thank you guys so much for a little brief trying to know who we are and where we've been and where we are now. Just to let you guys know where this all came from, how to put together the Iguana Entertainment 20-year anniversary. I was sitting down with these guys. We were at lunch one time with the Screw Attack team. Recently I was the GM for Modus Digital up here in Dallas, a motion capture studio, and we were doing some work with the Screw Attack team. We're sitting over some beers at lunch, which was like on a Wednesday or something, why there was beers. And they started asking questions about my, wait, wasn't I supposed to say that? They were asking questions about, you know, what was it like back during the N64 days and the Saturn days, and I started kind of, they kept feeding more beers and I tell more and more stories, and then Craig was like, dude, you gotta do a lecture, you gotta do a panel, this would be so cool. I was like, well, wait, guess what, the 20-year anniversary is coming. I think you're the one that put it out, said there was a 20 years coming up, and we had the anniversary coming up. We were thinking what we were doing in Austin, or the SGC was going on. So we're like, hey, let's come up here and do it here. And the whole idea behind this panel is not to really get into game development, you know, what went wrong, what was right, what went wrong, how we did things. We are going to touch a little bit on that, but it's more about the culture that we created. It was the heydays of the game industry. It was the Wild Wild West, because we were stepping into something. All of us were out of college. The average age was like maybe 21, 22. We were still sneaking people into bars at that time because, I mean, it was crazy because no one could do what we could do. We were coming out of college. There was no college degrees on game development. There was no college degrees on how to create art for games or programming. Nothing was like that. We were all coming out of our basements working on, you know, computers and teaching ourselves and getting together and kind of trying to find out what could we do with the right team put together. I came into Iguana Entertainment at the early days when they got into Austin, and the team had been there for about 2 years, and they were working just coming off of the Saga side, and are making the big jump into this thing coming called the N64. And it was going to revolutionize the way the world saw gaming. So there was new technology that was coming in, but it was really a cool time because there was no, I said it before, there was no, you weren't pigeonholed. You weren't just doing artwork. When I say artwork, you weren't just doing concept art. You weren't just doing animation. When you were an artist, that meant you did everything, the whole spectrum. You did everything from concept all the way to particles. You know, and everything in between there. These days, it really comes down to you're it's more like the movie industry. You're very specialized in what you're doing. The same thing on the programming side is that you weren't just working on one thing. You had to be able to accommodate when something came up and move very quickly. So we had to work very, very agile. Do you guys know the average team size we had back then?
16.
Take a while, guys. Just shout it out. 16. Who said 16? It's 17. That was the average game size that we had. Was like 17 people.
And you might be releasing 3 or 4 SKUs.
Yeah, exactly. That wasn't just one SKU. That was 3 SKUs. And we did it like a year to year and a half.
On the early quarterback club stuff, we would have 5 SKUs. We were developing for Saturn, PlayStation, PC, Genesis, and Super Nintendo, because when they were switching over, we didn't want to lose the old markets, but we had to go to the new market. So each piece of artwork we created would be for 5 or 6 different platforms.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if we could go to the PowerPoint, I do need to give a little bit of warning here. I should have said this earlier. So the whole idea is how this panel came up and why there's so much alcohol up here. not that I have to explain it. But we really wanted to give you guys an insight to what a reunion would be like. of us getting together and 20 years later where we are right now. And sitting around a bar and having some drinks in us and telling the stories how we remember them and the different things that happened during that time. Because when I say that it was the Wild Wild West, it seriously was. We had no, okay, there's no PowerPoints. I'm gonna warn you right now. If you guys are offended by language or nudity or yeah, get the fuck out of here. That's all I gotta say. Just get the fuck out. Thank you. And let me say right now too, if you guys got a question, okay, you guys are family. You guys are family with us right now. You guys don't have drinks in your hand, it's your own fault, because you can walk away the bar with a drink. But just on a note, there's a microphone right there, and jump into it. If you guys got questions, stand up. I was hoping to have a free mic that I could walk around and jump in there, but I may join you myself. I may jump down there just to talk from there, so it feels like you guys, oh, look at you guys are rocking, that's awesome. But the whole idea behind this is you guys are sitting behind a table, and we're all drunk off our asses remembering the good days.
Question, why the hell are you here?
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to get that answered pretty quickly. So, like I said, I did just have to let you guys know that we are drinking, and we want to let you guys know that, and there's going to be vulgarity, and I've got some pretty cool images I want to show and videos from the days that if we get it working, it'd be awesome. But, and feel free to shout anything out, because this is what it's all about. It's a round table. We want you guys to feel like, it's really bad that you guys are way in the back. Move the fuck forward. What the hell? Move up here. Come on, move forward. I'm going to keep pointing at you. I'll keep pointing. I'm pointing. Move up. There you go. Keep moving forward. There you go. All right. So we're just going to keep this in. Like I said, I got the warning. You guys don't know about the warning. We're going to have vulgarities in there and stuff. And we're going to kind of keep it as clean as possible. No, who am I kidding? It's not going to be clean in there. So like I was saying, the whole idea behind this panel was sitting down with the Screw Attack team, and they just wanted to know more about the beginning of the Iguana days. And I'm gonna take one quick question here, and then we're gonna jump into the early days. Go ahead. What do you get there? Say your name and your question.
My name is Peter. G110 Siggy. I just want to know if there's any games you regret making, because specifically.
I'm gonna stand up. Right?
We only have 2 hours.
I want to specifically point out Batman Forever, because it's like a scar on my child.
Sit your ass down. The only thing you played was the console. You didn't? Did you play the stand up?
One.
Yeah. Sit your ass down.
That was a notice. We it's a product.
We didn't make that. We didn't make that. So what?
We used to have things called stand-up arcade machines, and that was.
That's exactly it. So that was actually the very first game I worked on, and I actually got to. It was a huge pleasure to work with
Robin. That was his voice in the game.
Yeah, I can speak about Batman a little bit. Batman Forever was a very interesting and challenging project because the IP was divided into 2 executable paths. One of them was to deliver a product for consoles very quickly, so Genesis, Super Nintendo and such. And that project was managed by someone in New York who had never designed a game before, who was a producer. And you played the result, unfortunately.
That makes sense.
And then the other kind of, I suppose, more premium team, the Iguana studio, which was owned by Acclaim, was asked to produce a coin-op product. And that product was given a lot more time and Sega Titan hardware, which was very powerful hardware at the time to develop that game. We went through many prototypes, as Steve will remember, employing various 3D geometry techniques. There was a lot of stuff. The other thing that was tricky was that the script of the movie had not yet been finalized and was changing a lot. And there was a lot of things that were exciting and had a lot of gameplay potential.
Oh, and I just want to throw out there, I heard that while we were developing the video game for Batman Forever, apparently somebody at Warner Studios managed to steal the storyboard out of the vault. So I don't know what kind of security they had over at Warner Studios.
I don't know, but I know that Jeff Spangenberg personally got in trouble at the Warner Brothers lot because we were there on a studio tour to take pictures for building the sets in the computer. And they took us into this room which had all of the Batman Forever props, they were like little glass cubes and things. And so Jeff started taking the glass cubes off and like touching the props, and the security people were getting crazy. He was like tossing the two-face coin and things. They weren't very happy about that. But you know, the coin-op project that we made, I thought turned out to be a very, very solid game. It was a completely different game to the product that shipped on the Genesis. So I do apologize if you had a bad experience there.
It's quite alright.
Sit your ass down. Next.
To talk to the original question, which was if you work on any games that you regretted working on.
That's true.
Yeah. For me, for whatever reason, I seem to always be assigned to whatever project that was eventually going to get canceled. So I spent a large ton of my career developing artwork for shit that never got released. Which I know people who have whole careers like that, but at Iguana, for some reason, I was on all of them. And the first one, no, I was talking. the first one, which was being developed in Sunnyvale before we even left, was a game called Future Zone, and that's much of the screenshot that I sent you. Is a game that was the first game I worked on, and it got canceled. And then when we were in Austin, we were started on Turok 2. My team started on Turok 2, and then we started before Turok 1 team finished it. And then as soon as they finish it, they go, hey, that's ours, give it back. And so I got kicked off of Turok 2 after starting to develop it. And those were the guys that were pulling in the fucking bonuses too. I was like, anyway, and then we started working on a game called Immortal Hockey, which was going to be like a 3D hoverboard, like you got like rockets with Julius. And we started doing that, started doing concepts, and that's the team that eventually became Iggy's Wrecking Balls. But it's like, how many fucking projects am I going to work on that get canceled?
So the answer to the question is any project that Adam worked on.
Before Iguana Entertainment really took off, we were doing some development on some games that were less than glamorous for also a less than glamorous publisher. It wasn't porn or anything, but these were some seriously low quality games it was just shovelware. We were just getting games in the box. And I'm a little bit disappointed in the overall quality of those, but getting those projects together did let us get some money coming in that allowed us to bootstrap some other projects. Our first big name brand project that I can remember was a port of Might and Magic, I believe, for
That's where you clap Might and Magic.
None of us worked on the I think we missed that bullet anyway. I would say Quarterback Club 2001, though, we were forced to make it for the Sega Dreamcast on Windows CE, if you know anything about the technology. And so it was basically a cell phone OS. We had to ship a football video game on it because of a contract. So that would be the worst one for me.
The one thing, to jump in there, everything that happened with NFL Quarterback Club, we had a upper management. One thing we're trying to do is leave names out of what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to do my best the more I drink. I drop names and stuff, and I already did it for IGN, which I'll probably get sued for, but that's all good. But the thing with NFL Quarterback Club, we were always competing with Madden, right? And Madden always came out like maybe 3 months before us. And then 3 months before we're ready to ship the game, certain management would run into our office going, oh my God, we got to have this now. And we're like, there's no fucking way we can get that in the time frame that we've got. Like, no, just do it. And we walk out the door. And we're like, okay, the certain person just said we had to have this in the game, and we had to like jump on that. And the fact that the team was always able to, like, whatever Madden had, 3 months later was somehow incorporated into the game coming to stay competitive. And the fact that it was always back and forth, because there's Madden fans and there's NFL Quarterback Club fans. I hope there's NFL Quarterback fans.
That's exactly. I'd like to say, because earlier I made some disparaging remarks about having the licensing, but the reason we beat Madden on the 98 version of Quarterback Club for N64 was for a few other reasons. And the game was really damn good, was one of them. And we had the Best Sports Graphics of the Year from Next Generation Magazine on that product, and we were the first 3D for 3D players. We had the breath man of the mouth, and John Madden himself commented during a football game about, because it was cold and the players, you could see their breath on the field, he commented about it like in the football video game. And it's like, so the Madden spokes head person there was talking about Quarterback Club, so that was a cheer moment for us at home. You guys was a great amount of stuff, and Nintendo actually paid us, Acclaim, a lot of money to not ship on PlayStation. It was just a big year for Quarterback Club. I wanted to correct some of that record, but it also with the licensing.
Our team was half the size of Madden's.
Yeah, and I knew a lot of those guys, and they would say, you know, every time the Acclaim game comes out, we get the Copy Quarterback Club and look at it, and we're just like, my God, because our graphics, they thought our graphics were much better. And we compressed, we had a lot more actual stuff on the cartridges back in the cartridge days.
Hey, hold on just a second. Do you guys remember even the 96, 97 times of what NFL quarterback looked like?
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm gonna have to stop talking so we can actually play games so I can get this to work.
Hey, Mike, can you get that probably back up on the screen? I just wanted to say that those guys over at Madden were pretty happy with.
I gotta be there. I'm gonna try to make this work.
Hang on there. So I also want to put in perspective. You got a video on 96? Yes. Excellent.
Now you know why I drink.
This is where the elevator music plays.
Technical difficulty at work. Guys, like 3 weeks in this PowerPoint.
This guy's just standing there, I'm sure he has a piss.
Okay, go ahead. What do you got?
What are you talking about? Those graphics are so good.
So while we're waiting for the graphics,
I know a lot of you guys worked on a sports game, so me and my friend always talk about how whenever a sports game moves to the next generation, it always like loses a whole bunch of features for some reason, and then it seems like they spend the whole console generation just catching up to the features of the last generation, and then they start over again. So like, are you guys really like working on new features, or are you just like trying to work to restore the old game when you move from generation to generation?
It's always a matter of cost. So when you first, and I'll tell you the best way to say it. I remember when we first did Quarterback Club, where we were coming out on the CD-ROM for the first time, we're moving away from cart technology. It caught everybody off guard with exactly how much work that would be. We weren't even moving to 3D yet. And Madden canceled theirs, didn't even ship that year. We were so late that we ended up shipping a week before the Super Bowl. So, I mean, that was before the 98 version. When you're trying to anticipate costs, so when you're going to a new platform, there's a lot of things, everybody wants everything to look better and be at a new level. So you're really kind of re-engineering, trying to make stuff better. And then you go through a phase of rebuilding some of the little features. Sometimes the features never come back. I mean, like we lost the Quarterback Club Challenge, QB Challenge, and we didn't even get a version of that back until I think 2002.
You know, one of the things too, I can artistically, I remember, this kind of goes to your question, is there was, when you started at Iguana, everyone started after a certain point on sports titles, wherever your interest may lie. And there was a lot of desire for artists not to work on sports titles. They wanted to, make dragons or whatever, something else. So there was a lot of turnover. You'd always come in, start a sports title, then shift over. I don't know if it's still the case. I mean, graphics right now are like mind-blowing, right? So other titles may be different, but this was back in that point in time. So there was a lot of relearning of the same, problems that people had to tackle fresh, with a brand new crop of artists. That might have been part of it too.
That's a good point. I think it's interesting because we had like 4 games going on at a time at the studio, and I think the sports titles were probably the lesser glamour. It's because we do it every year, and people either like sports and love it, or they're interested in all the other stuff. So there's a little bit of a less glamour, and I think also on we're talking for Quarterback Club to answer your question. In all sports titles, there's a hard launch day. You have to have it done. It has to be done in a year. So if anything introduces more work, it's harder to get everything back and going again. So it's probably not in the plan to drop features, but they're the things that get cut at the end when you got to get it out the door. I bet you for every sports title.
Something to keep in mind there too is what Pete was saying is, it's true when the new artists came on board or new programmers came on board that the sports titles were kind of like the entry level to get into the studio. But those were the cash cows. The guys that stayed on NFL Quarterback Club or NBA Jam or the baseball, All-Star Baseball, those guys were raking in bonuses every freaking year where the rest are like, oh no, I'm going to jump on Turok and spend the next 2 years. I'm going to make all this money. What? Where'd that money go? Oh, I mean,
yeah, just from an artist's perspective, it was tough to be working on like a football jersey when just literally down the hall someone's working on the next Turok boss. As an artist, that was the issue.
Dude, take a look at this raptor ripping this guy apart. What do you got? I got a quarterback putting his arms on.
At least back in the 1990s. Yeah, back in the 1990s, at least, about half of our development revenue was coming from sports titles, and you know it was really cool to get some really creative folks like especially Neil and Pete here working on fancy ideas for new games like the Turok and some of the others. But yeah, about half of our revenue was coming from these sports titles.
Absolutely. Great, thanks. I'm gonna let John give you guys a little bit of introduction on where Iguana came from. He is really the only person here that was one of the original founders of Iguana Entertainment, and then Adam you came over from California as well with them. So John, if you want to give us a little background there under 30 seconds.
Oh, okay, thanks Mike, I'll try and keep it quick. When I got introduced, like I said, I was moonlighting, just trying to earn a little bit of extra money when I was working for this company called Mediagenic. I'd go evenings and weekends, work at this little development office. And on the door it said Punk Development. Back in those days, apparently the company was started with the name Team Design. There was already a company in South San Jose that complained about these young punks up in Sunnyvale that were stealing their name, so they changed the name to Punk Development, or at least that's the way I like to remember it. And then, I started working there just through a buddy of mine that said, hey, I've got some hardware development work. Can you help me out with this? So I just started helping him out. And then apparently one night he was riding his motorcycle and made an illegal U-turn or something, and a police car started chasing, and he thought he could outrun the police officer. So
GTA is born.
Yeah, so he led chase, but finally laid down his bike and took out some shrubberies in the median strip, and wound up being arrested. And while he was under arrest and house arrest, I got promoted. So that's basically the way I got started with what became Iguana Entertainment. I kept developing these hardware interfaces between, at the time we were using...
Did somebody say 30 seconds? 30 seconds is, good lord. All right, so actually we're going to go right back to John, because John actually has a really good story about the early days, about a certain container showing up in the mail for the president of the company at the time.
Okay, so yeah.
Stick to it, really, this is worth it.
All right. Okay, so yeah, years later, must have been about 94 or 95. So we were already working here in Austin, and at one point, our president comes to me, walks into my lab with this thing that was about this long. It was a metal can that had been mailed to him. It had just his name, the name of the company, our address, no return address, but postage from London. And he comes to my lab, I think Neil was there at the time. He comes to my door and says, here, open this. It may be a bomb.
It was about this point where I'd actually knocked on John. John had a lab in the Iguana office with lots of electronic equipment that I don't understand. And I came in there and I was like, I was going to ask him a question about my development kit or something, and he's like, oh yeah, look at this can Jeff gave me. He thinks it might be a bomb. And I was like, I'll come back.
So I was a little bit nervous. I thought about calling the Austin police and the bomb squad and all that. But I just rattled this thing around and realized there's something obviously metal inside. It's heavy, but not quite heavy enough to be a hand grenade. So I pressed the sides of the can and realized, okay, well, it's probably not booby trapped, but still, I'll put it on my workbench. By the way, that old workbench that I had was something that we bought from Nolan Bushnell when he was downsizing.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is the only game development company I've ever worked for that actually had a soldering iron as part of its development. I mean, we made shit. We made hardware.
We'll jump into that as well about some of the ingenuity that came in, because these days, when you get out there, you buy the Unreal Engine, blah, 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 everything's off the shelf. This fucker on the end, he built that shit from scratch. I'm seriously. Back to the bomb.
Okay, well, yeah. Let me just set the stage. So, back in those days when we were developing games for these consoles, we actually had to have an interface from the host computer to the development target, and that was a lot of my job. You know, back in the days of Activision, they took an Atari 2600.
The bomb.
Oh, the bomb. Okay, I'll get back to that. So with the bomb. So I take this can, put it in a vise, and very carefully drill a hole in the center there. You know, we use a little inspection mirror, realize, okay, the ends aren't taped or anything, it's not going to blow up. Cut it around the side, open it up, and inside there is this beautiful can opener with some marketing material attached to it, saying, yeah, isn't it nice to have the right tool when you need it? And I thought, wow, if these guys had a return address, this would be really, really clever marketing. But without the return address, this was a potential threat. So I spent the rest of the afternoon calling around all the novelty stores in Austin to find as many spring snakes as I could find, and clipped some letters out of that day's newspaper and sent them a little note on some copy paper that just read, "Thank you for the lovely can opener." Put that at the bottom of the box, spring snakes on top, and shipped it out to London.
Wow, 30 seconds. Okay, next question.
All right, so Turok was like the very first shooter I ever played as a kid, and when I discovered that there were cheats in the game, I was just like, what? I can break the game like this? Oh my god, his head is big. I can never run out of ammo. This is amazing. So I was just like, that kind of got me addicted to like finding games with like zany cheat codes. So I'm just like, what kind of like things that were like that could have been like alter the game completely differently did not make it into the actual finished product?
I can't remember. Usually we would have a kind of a running list of ideas that people would contribute as crazy ideas, and a lot of them would sometimes come from mistakes. So if people were bringing meshes into the game and something went wrong with the weighting or the scale of an asset, a component of the asset, you go, oh, look at that, that's funny, his head's big. And then it'd be like, hey, you know, we should actually make that allowable in the game, you know, be a mode. So a lot of those things kind of fell into the category of happy accidents.
Yeah, a lot of it was like, from the programmer side, we would put debug tools in there, like to turn on, I don't know, was it pen and ink mode, where we're just trying to find like the outline of geometry to see how complex it is and stuff, and we're like, you know what, why don't we just put this in as a cheat? So a lot of it is just kind of by accident, like Neil was saying, so.
Some things go in and don't get published and nobody ever knows about them. But that can get you into trouble.
But back to the old days, we make this shit up.
Yeah. We make it up as we go along.
Well, yeah,
that's serious. It's just there's no reasoning behind
about things that don't get.
We're not that smart.
Yeah. So lately online, there's been a little bit of chatter, and somebody from one of the gaming websites had contacted me about a version of NBA Jam XXX. Do you remember that one? So yeah, this is something that we just had internally that just used different code space for slightly different audio. So you know, instead of you know, you doing a certain move and it says, you know, Johnson grabs the layup, it says grabs his Johnson, and it goes downhill from there.
You know, that reminds me of, the question reminds me of something I've never told anyone else about before, except for a few chosen people, but the very first quarterback club I was put on to, I came in out of college and I worked on it for several years, and we launched my own. We weren't even going to do a PC version, but they thought, hey, we got this extra guy, let's have him do a PC version. I never told it, nobody else on the stage even knows about this, but I put a cheat code in there that I showed a few friends after we got off the store shelves later. If you execute the executable for Quarterback Club 96 and you put /naked players on the line, it just uses skin tones with colored football helmet and boots, but everything else is skin tone, so it looks like a bunch of naked people running around the field. I don't think
so why is someone raising a hand going, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I can't.
Exactly. One of the fun things about being a small studio when we're making these games is we have to have ingenuity. We gotta like, shit comes up and we gotta solve it. We gotta sit there and go like, how are we gonna do this? We didn't have a huge sound studio. We didn't have, you know, one of the things that comes up is like during the Batman Forever game, all those voices you hear in there, that's us. All the background images, there's like one thing, there's like, Adam, what is that? There was like a fight scene where we're all in the background.
Well, that was from Batman Forever. We had just regular video cameras, and at the time I had like really long hair down here to the waist, so I was like in a white tank top, like cheering for the guys. And then I had like me and Greg Hargrove, I think, were like 5 guys in the scene. So if you play Batman Forever, like me and one other guy are like 5 of the criminals in the background.
Yeah, and the way we did that.
A bunch of green paper and then.
It was green paper. There was some green screen.
Just put up a bunch of green paper in the break room and just.
Well, you know, Scott, that wasn't the break room. Yeah, our building had some office space down one floor downstairs. It was unfinished space. We basically took I think it was just a shipping pallet or two, put them together, used that as our stage. I brought in like photographic lights, a tripod, and my little video camera, and we just started shooting video, and then I handed off the tape to.
Remember when they brought the girls in? Yeah, you know, let's face it, there was mostly all guys there at the studio.
Yeah,
so when they brought the girls in, it brought all the guys out of the office.
Oh yeah.
I'm just getting some water.
That's one thing too, but having a small studio, it literally was 99% guys. And we didn't have an HR department. We didn't need an HR department. We didn't. The first time they brought in a female, I believe it was a secretary.
It was always the receptionist.
It was always the receptionist. And
I married her, actually.
He did marry her.
I won.
So I'm not going to tell stories what we were thinking about the secretary. But the thing is
Let's stay on the script.
it really came down to, the minute they brought, the hot secretary in, and also we needed HR because it was like a gopher club, because like heads would pop up and the secretary would walk by and then pop right back down. Go around ourselves. But what I was trying to get to is like we had to be really intuitive about what we were doing at the time. We did our own sound recording within the studio. We did our own, like I said, green screen in the studio. I felt, really proud that they came in and said, hey, listen, we want you to be the voice of Robin. I'm like, this is awesome. I'm 25 years old. I get to be the voice of Robin. I'm like, no, you have the voice of a little boy. I hate you.
No, you look good in Speedo.
In Speedo, yeah. But they literally took me in the back room, and they had pads. This is where the story goes. No. They took me in the back room, and they're like, listen, we need authentic hit noises. So we're gonna, I was like, okay, how about this? Like, no, that sounds like a porn. So they were like swinging pads at me and recording pads. I remember getting like bruised up and down. Like, no, I need to sound like this. Now fall to the ground and do this. I'm like, I'm a team player, yay.
Yeah, I remember one time we needed to record the crowd cheers for NFL Quarterback Club 96. We were just in the conference room, the whole company, everybody crowded in there, and we were trying to just cheer as loud as we could.
The whole process, that's how we would end meetings. We would all be in the conference room for a meeting, and then right at the very end, okay, by the way, Mark's here with his mic, everybody start going, yeah!
Exactly. And he looped that over and over and got the big crowd cheer.
Yeah. So I'm going to add to that story. I think the most horrifyingly painful moment that I ever had at Iguana was we had this HR guy. We finally brought an HR named Pete Suarez. He was an ex-Marine. He was basically if you could imagine a real life. He was Popeye.
Yeah.
He was chomping on a cigar. He had a sailor's hat. He had a goatee. He had a ship tattoo on his arm.
And blonde guy
he
here.
was really aggressive and like a little bulldog. So anyway, they decided that I was friends with the sound guy. I did a lot of the voice stuff, like for Batman Enemies. We all ended up in the voice chamber at one point or another. But we did some off-site recording, and they brought me and Pete, and this is for Quarterback Club, and they got professional football pads and put it on me and put it on Pete and said, okay, you two guys run at each other at full speed for an hour straight with a microphone because they wanted to get the sound of pads crunching on pads. And this fucker took it so goddamn seriously. And I'm like, I'm an aggressive enough guy that I can do this, but he was really wanted to play the role, and it was like my forearms like bruised up. It's like I couldn't walk for like 4 days. But we got some really cool authentic pad-on-pad action sound from that.
All right, who's up next? What's your name and where you come from and what's your legs?
is Tanner Larson, also known as G1 Cyrax from Moorhead, Minnesota. I have a backup question for this question, just in case it backfires. Did anybody on this team work on Extreme G?
Extreme G was made in the UK division. It was not made in Austin, Texas.
It's made in England, like one of the Acclaim studios in England, wasn't it?
So did either of you work on that? No?
No, what, because they're European, so what it was?
So then the other question I have is, how many times did you have to work with Midway for ports or sports titles or any other titles?
I didn't directly work with Midway on any of those products, but the way that process worked was it was someone wrote a check with a lot of zeros behind it and basically said, go and make that thing. So there wasn't really a lot of interaction with titles like Mortal Kombat and such. It was like, hey, we bought the rights to convert this property to Genesis or Mega Drive or SNES and such. Just get on with it. Assets were passed over, but there wasn't a lot of collaboration with Ed Boon, and it wasn't until later when I would work in Midway in Chicago that I would actually work with Ed when we were working on, Marvel versus the DC kind of, Mortal Kombat versus DC and all that kind of stuff. He's a super nice guy, by the way.
And now I did remember one point at which our company in the early days had the option of developing for Acclaim console ports for either Mortal Kombat or NBA Jam, and our president decided to go with NBA Jam, and so after NBA Jam outsold the Mortal Kombat port, and then we were really proud about that one.
Also, NFL Quarterback Club 98, Green Bay Packers are too OP, please nerf them.
Hey, give me a fist bump. Give me a fist bump.
I love all the quarterback club comments and everything. I wasn't sure if it'd even be mentioned today. So.
Oh, God bless. Now that we got Neil's ear here, right, too, I want to kind of touch base a little bit back to the ingenuity of the Iguana days and kind of like where we are now and what we did back then, some of the tools.
There's a good example of that. When we were working on Turok, one of the biggest challenges was people were very aware at that time of games like Doom and such. That had been a big thing, running around first-person shooting, but no one had really replicated that experience on a console. And one of the biggest challenges that Turok faced was creating a control scheme with the Nintendo 64 pad that would let people have a really good quality first-person shooter experience. And speaking to Mike's point, this was a real kind of innovation that Iguana managed to kind of crack this nut, and that was actually done by an engineer called Ian Dunlop. And what Ian came up with was that the player would use the analog thumbstick to turn their head so they could look up, down, and left and right, whilst using the yellow cluster buttons, up, down, left and right buttons, to move their body. And this had never been done before in the industry on a control pad. This was the first time it had ever been done. And I remember Ian and I had actually worked together in DMA design in Scotland. And I remember Ian having a little prototype of that running in his office, and he asked me to come through and take a look at it. And I was playing with it, and for a few moments it felt kind of strange, but after a couple of minutes I was like, wow, look, you're definitely onto something here. It's like I can actually move and circle straight around a target. And that had never been done on a control pad before, so there was a lot of innovation that happened.
And I would add to the Ian Dunlop story. He was the guy that came up with the first mechanics for Iggy's Wrecking Balls as well. It's like some guy, the designer of that game wrote up a couple of lines of how he thought he wanted it to work, and like 5 days later, Dunlop had that thing up and working. It was just really fast and really had a good idea.
Yeah, Ian's a very exceptional developer, and he has his own company called OE Fun. In case you guys are interested.
John shows him there.
Oh yeah. So what Ian created, I believe, was really the first time that we ever had a kind of a strafe mode in first-person shooters.
One thing I'm not sure people are aware of as well, one of the ingenuities of Acclaim was actually motion capture. Acclaim was one of the very first studios in the world to actually implement motion capture into a video game, and I believe Turok was one of the first third-person shooter with motion capture. Am I correct, Neil?
Well, Quarterback Club had a lot of it, but I don't know. We might have come out first. I don't know if that's true or not, but we came out every year, so
yeah.
We probably weren't the first ones to get our hands on it, but we might have shipped something with it first.
Turok, I think it would be accurate to say, was the first commercially released video game that used motion capture data to drive 3D geometry. Because people had used green screen techniques and some motion capture to create things that they then converted into sprites. But Turok was the first time that a real skeleton in runtime had actually been executed in a game, and it's really a large part of what created the breathtaking effect of Turok when people saw it the first time and saw the enemies running around, and they're like, wow, look at the way the guy moves, that looks really cool. And when you combine that with the talents of Shane and the other folks and the other artists at the studio who really brought those creatures, those monsters to life, it's really a testament to their work that something that was captured on a human was of equal footing to something that was brute force animated.
And one thing I should add about Turok is I think the argument could be made that Turok is probably the most famous, popular game that Iguana ever developed. Would you say that would be close to being true? What does the audience think? Or Turok? I'm so bitter because I was not working on them. I was working on fucking football helmets at the time. Is this a man that needs to be working on dinosaurs or what?
Yeah.
Anyway, but what I remember about that project when it first started, it was like an afterthought. It was like one of those, okay, this is going to be a big risk because anything that wasn't a developed IP, for Acclaim is the company that was famous for like, we're going to buy a big name, make a shitty game, and cash in on the name, not on the actual game. So to create a new IP was like, this is going to be the bastard child. We're going to throw a few bucks at it. If it makes some money, we'll be happy. But it turned out to be such a huge hit, and that's why it had such a small dev team, but became such a huge hit. And I think most people would think that was like a target, but it was really an afterthought at the studio. It was like if you were on Turok, people thought, oh, I'm on the shit project. I'm on the project that no one's going to ever see.
Well, and just
to be our hit.
Just to add a little bit to what Adam was saying there, just to give you guys a bit of backstory, Turok actually started as a 2D side-scrolling game. It was actually going to be a similar experience to, say, a Golden Axe kind of game. And the specification for this game was very heavily developed. There was a lot of thought that went into it by David Dinspear, who was driving the project at that time. And it wasn't until we were probably maybe about 6 to 8 months into that paper specification that the N64 and Nintendo approached us and said, hey, we have this 3D stuff, so you can do this 3D thing. And it was at that point that it became a 3D project.
The David Dinspear too, back in those days, David was literally, I think when I say it was the face of Acclaim at the time. This guy, I mean, he had arms bigger than my waist. He was just kind of short.
He would sit in his office. He would lift.
He would lift in his office. You'd come in and have a body. You come in the meeting, like, hold on. Let me pull a couple reps out here. In there. But then he would take the reporters when they come for press day for Turok, he'd take them out to his house and he'd have these like M16s and full machine guns and guns that they'd be shooting off the back, in Austin. You're shooting these guns. What's that? Just drop it.
Thank God he didn't bring him in the office.
Yeah, he'd bring him in the office too, just to show like, this is what a real one feels like. So you gotta animate. Shit, where'd you get this? And just to give props to David Dinspear, I mean, that guy was a visionary because I still remember the meeting coming on, I got this idea, okay, it's gonna be based on this comic book and it's an Indian that runs around and guess what? Shoots dinosaurs. I'm like, okay, next. Fuck, he shoots dinosaurs, and but at the time, this was Jurassic Park time, coming out in the movies and everything like this, and it just seemed to click, and the whole studio he was such a good pitch man, that he got the whole studio behind him and going, this is going to be the next thing, this is going to be what's going to pull Iguana up, it's going to pull Acclaim into the next level of gaming, and 5 titles later, I think it kind of proved itself as an IP that stands for itself. So just props for David Dinspear. So
Probably to mention Rob Cohen a little bit too. As the first engineer on the project, he had a lot of involvement early on. And I was always a little, I was put on Quarterback Club, but Rob Cohen was hired 1 week before me and got the gig to do Turok. So it feels like I just missed it.
On the Turok side too, does anyone know? I have pictures up here, a really good PowerPoint thing, but does anyone know what a bug development kit is? I didn't think so. Well, it was. Go ahead, Greg.
It wasn't a development kit. Actually, it was It was a piece of hardware that allowed you to load ROMs from a disk.
It was basically a kind of a way to fake the N64 into thinking it was reading from a cartridge. So the piece below the N64 was basically a memory bank that you would upload an image into, and then you could fool the N64 into thinking that it was talking to a cartridge. And from a development perspective, obviously, we would create the game and then pipe it into the bung, which sounds a bit naughty. And then it would play from there.
So the N64 was being developed right around the time that I got shipped out to Acclaim and Iguana. And so before the N64 days and before Iguana started buying the bungs, I was responsible for creating the Nintendo development system that allowed us to upload our code into this RAM space that emulated a ROM.
So how did Iguana Entertainment get their hands on these? Anyone?
This is John's story.
Oh, no, it's not my story. I wasn't even there. So after they shipped me out to California to work for Acclaim and Iguana, then I guess Jay was left holding the bag and had to get his hands on these units somehow.
Yeah, I mean, it's all a bit interesting, really, because the reason that we went this way was because the development kits that Nintendo required us to use to make the games were extremely expensive. I can't remember specifically, but they were tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I don't remember what they were on the N64, but on the Super Nintendo, when they came out with that thing at the end of 1990, the development station on that was $60,000 per programmer you had on a project.
And we needed lots of those things.
Yeah, and a couple of years later, they had a cost-reduced version that was still $15,000. So the little thing that I cobbled together and manufactured for Iguana, that cost us $500. And on top of that, I had a cost-reduced version for just our artists and our musicians. It cost $50. That was our art card.
And that is a huge impact on game quality, just so you know. I mean, the more you can do, faster you can work, the better the game is.
Yeah, I mean, the key was really getting the hardware on everyone's desk, and there was no way we could do that at $50,000 a head. So we had to reduce that cost. And I don't really know all the shenanigans, but there was trips to Russia involved. The Russian mob may have been involved. White slavery, that kind of thing.
The stories that we hear, we can't deny or say they were true, but that one of our guys went over there and got off the plane and was meted by a white SUV, full armed guards with machine guns, and just to get these devices, it literally was the Russian mob that was applying these things, I guess, supplying these things for us. And the good thing is we
never happened.
Never happened. But the good thing is we came back with a
redacted
carton full of these things, and we were able. I do. One of the funny things was I remember one time we had a publisher walking through, and this was literally like 10 minutes before they were walking through the doors, and the secretary running through the halls going, "Hide your bungs, hide your bungs, hide your bungs." Like this, and we knew we had to pull the bungs off and throw them under the table and stuff, so no one saw what we were using because we weren't supposed to use them. Policies, yeah, straight up policies out there. So, good. You got a question there?
I'm Eli Wilson from Blanket, Texas, and you said that the team was very small, and in the early days, just how small of an office were you guys stuffed in? Because I imagine it was probably pretty hellish at the beginning.
So we're going to start with that great question. We're gonna get with Adam first, can tell about how small they were. Even Carlson can show how small they were in California.
All right. Well, back before Iguana, back when we were still running punk development, we had this little industrial slip in one of Silicon Valley's little one-story tilt-up buildings, and to give you some idea, each one of these buildings had maybe about 6 tenants, and in the front we had a lobby and 4 offices. In our lobby we had our photocopy machine, we had a table with our tank with iguanas. Our first 3 iguanas were Killer, Spike, and Squirt. And these were just the boss's pets that he kept there. And then yeah, up front with those 3 offices, there was this little one-hole crapper, and it was clear that some previous tenant had a little, like a plywood table in there with telephone lines coming in, so that whoever was sitting on the can could sit there and be online. Oh yeah, this was what we would call an efficiency. And then in the back there was just a warehouse with a big warehouse door and like a person door there as well. And while I was doing contract work for these guys, was when we built out some additional office space in the back, and never did get rid of the smell of the fumes of building all that before we moved to another office, a slightly better office in Santa Clara, and then. And then that became Iguana Entertainment. When we actually moved out of those old punk development offices, that's when our artist, Matt Stubbington, actually took a canvas, treated the canvas, and hand-painted the original Iguana Entertainment logo before we even moved to Santa Clara and then back to Sunnyvale and then off to Austin, Texas. In Austin, Texas, we got our first offices there. It was the top story of a building where some government offices were, and they had some crummy old network. We didn't even build out any of the walls or anything, and it was kind of a crummy little space, but we eventually built out some
You
more.
said top story buildings, 2 stories. What the hell?
I'm going to jump in and talk about the transition between Sunnyvale and Austin. In Sunnyvale, it was like 2 big rooms with a bunch of people sitting around on tables and desks. Nothing has changed in game dev. I work in the same environment that I worked in Sunnyvale. The difference, though, is when we moved to Austin, is we moved in with the direct intention to grow. So we had tons of space in Austin. And I was talking about this story earlier, but this is pre-network. This is pre-internet. This is pre-Windows. Everything. Like my first computer at Iguana was on an Amiga, and I had a 7 megabyte hard drive. And when we moved to Austin from Sunnyvale, we suddenly had all this space. So this is pre-network. We'd never worked on a network before. So the way that we meaning the artists, would give our artwork to the designers, and the designers were the level builders. So let's say like for Aero the Acro-Bat 2, everything was built 2D, everything was on a square. And you give them graphics, and then the designers would go in there and build their levels by placing squares on a grid. And so when we moved to Austin, we had this big U-shaped building. So we were basically all around, we were on one floor, but we were around the perimeter of the building. And they had, okay, the design team's going to be here, and the art team's going to be here, and the engineers are going to be here. So we were like the furthest point you could be from design. So we would have floppies, and we'd finish doing artwork, and we'd have to run down the office and give somebody a floppy, and they'd put it in and go, oh, you're 2 pixels off. I'm sorry.
No, that kind of floppy.
You're like 2 pixels off, or it's not right on the grid. Run back to the office. And what John was starting to talk about was the old fucked up network that was in there, but these guys eventually started throwing cables, and we built a network.
Yeah, I had to get a ladder, pop these 2 foot by 2 foot ceiling tiles, and me and one of the programmers, we took a screwdriver, taped it to the end of our 10 base T cable, and tried to chuck that as far as we could. and then pop another ceiling tile, and we were tired of popping these ceiling tiles, and there was no crawl space in there. There was like this much space between the ceiling tile and the roof, and there were a lot of vents and everything. It was a mess.
All right, so we got to keep going here. We got about, I thought we had till 7:30. I guess we got till 7 here. So I'm going to keep going here. That's right. That's right. Let's get to the questions here. The important ones. You got there, Captain.
Hello, I'm Luis Gonzalez from all the way from Plano, Texas, and I'm here to talk about your greatest FPS produced, which is South Park.
Just a quick South Park, I can actually say, South Park is probably, this is just my opinion, was one of the most fun games I've ever worked on. I got to work on the Turok franchise, but South Park was one of those that they came to us and said, listen, this was like in July, and they said this new game just came out, or this new video is going around, and movies or TV shows coming out, and South Park, we need to have a game out by that time. We're like, what? You gotta have it up by Christmas. We're like, huh? How are we gonna do this? It's like, shit, that's 6 months away. How are you gonna do this? So they literally took all the seniors in the studio, pulled them into one room. And I remember the meeting, it was Neil. Neil was the head of South Park right there. He's the brainchild behind this thing. And he said, listen, we gotta have this game out before Christmas. It is going to make us a shitload of money if we can have it on the shelves by Christmas. I'll let you take that, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the backstory behind South Park was that Greg Fishback, who was the CEO of Acclaim, had managed to negotiate with Comedy Central, who is the current holder of the South Park brand, to acquire the South Park license for a very small fee, and I believe it was something around $50,000, which, as I'm sure you guys understand, is really a very small amount of money. And that was because the show at that point was, everybody had seen The Spirit of Christmas, the little kind of clip they'd done in college, and there was a lot of buzz about it. Comedy Central had just signed the show, so it was really just beginning to trend upwards, but they didn't really know the value of the brand. So they picked it up for a sniff, and as Mike said, basically, the mission then became, how can we turn this into a game very, very quickly? Yeah, you'll see there, that's the team on the side there. We had everybody drawn up as South Park characters.
Scott left. No, yeah, he's so drunk right now. He's like, that's me.
South Park was a very, very difficult project. It's probably one of the most challenging projects I've worked on in my 26-year career. We did not have much time to make the game, and one of the problems that we had in the production of the game was that we only really had the Turok engine to work with, which was an FPS engine, so we're running around, we're shooting things, and we're like, okay, well that's fine, because in the cartoon, in season 1, we see the kids running around with Uncle Jimbo shooting the bears. He's coming right at us, and they shoot the bear. So we're like, okay, that's fine. Well, we can do guns then. And everyone at Comedy Central was, that's okay. You can do that. And then, of course, what happened was Columbine. And when Columbine happened, the train stopped. Basically, everything stopped. Comedy Central freaked out. Paramount, who was also involved a little bit at that time because they were splitting up with Matt and Trey on the movie, also completely freaked out, and we just kind of felt that we were fucked, quite frankly, excuse my language, because we had this first-person shooter game, and now we weren't allowed to shoot people. So it was a real problem, and this really speaks as a testament to the team, because we basically went away as a group of talented people and thought about this problem, and we basically proposed substituting all of the weapons in the game with kind of toys or kind of innocent things. So it's like, hey, instead of having a pistol, you'd have a snowball, and your secondary fire would be you take the snowball off screen, hear your fly go down, and so
been around that table because it was so fucking awesome, man.
Yeah.
All right. Think of something completely outrageous, different than you've ever thought of as a first-person shooter, and we all came up with craziest fucking
This was
ideas.
insane deadline. I mean, I remember going, guys, we got 2 nights to get every single idea we can to South Park to get them.
Start drawing, writing every.
And nothing was off limits.
There was Cheese Whiz. What if we sprayed on him and whacked him out and ate him up?
Yeah.
Being a cat by the table.
Tornadoes. There was.
Chucking it.
I liked snipers. I like being a sniper, so I was like, I remember the chicken fucker episode. So I was like, hey, what if we use the feathers? And I think you helped me with that. I was doing the effects. I was like, what if we use the feathers? You squeeze the thing and you shoot an egg out, and that's just sniper gun.
Well, one of the wildest ideas.
That's how that came about.
Being the cow's ass on your head. That was one that actually made it into the game, where you'd fire this kind of huge smart ball of a cow that would land on someone's head ass first, and slowly slide down their body, so that if you were playing multiplayer on your screen, you'd be looking around and you'd just see this cow rectum slowly sliding down, covering your feet.
That was the POW 3000. And I got to animate that, and I can remember my parents calling one time going, what'd you work on this week? And I'm like, I'm working on the insides of a cow, because you're up its asshole. And I get paid to do this.
Let me tell you, just real quick, this is how I got into doing effects. Before that, I had created some of the characters, for South Park, some of the levels, it was based off the Turok engine and stuff, and we knew we were making a first-person shoot. And so we sat around the table, and I remember Neil and all of us were sitting around, and he was like, all right, you guys are going to be doing this, you guys are going to be doing this. Who wants to do effects? And back then, it was kind of a raise your hand if you want to do it kind of thing. And I looked around and nobody raised their hand. And I was like, well, it's South Park. How bad could I fuck this up? You know? And so I went and talked to the guy that made Turok, and we started working on, the Turok engine and making the effects for it. And I've done effects ever since. That's how I got into doing effects.
Tell them about your most proud effect on South Park.
Oh, absolutely. It has to be Mr. Hanky. Besides the egg, Mr. Hanky, the turd,
The shit they leave
leave behind.
Look, I made shit leave behind. He's walking around with their shit.
It was the shittiest effect he'd ever done.
Going around he's ever done at the same time.
I don't think I actually got to your question. Did you have a question about South Park?
I'm sorry, yeah.
It's like, it doesn't have enough. It doesn't have enough corn in it. I'm like, really?
We need to up the corn factory by about 13%.
The effects look good.
All right. My actual question was, South Park being being a really raunchy show, were there things that you can get away with in the industry back then that you can't even do now in this industry?
That's a really good question because I think it's actually probably a little bit freer now than it was back then because Nintendo regulations on content that could be on the cartridge were very, very strict. Everybody's aware of things now like, alcohol and tobacco usage in products and bad language and gore and violence and things. But Nintendo regulations even spoke to things like religious iconography. It was not allowed, for example, to have any religious iconography in the game. So if you had a crucifix or a cross.
Did the rating system exist at that time?
Yeah. No, this was
I think that's a big
this was
reason.
purely internal Nintendo
Yeah, that was
policy.
for the Nintendo seal of quality.
Yeah, to make it kind of child friendly and stuff. So we were definitely pushing the edge there. It was pretty challenging, but there's definitely much more of a free market, especially with the indie scene now. Where you can push your own kind of game vision out to Steam and stuff like that. So I think things are a lot freer now than they used to be.
But I think we haven't done the research, but I believe South Park is the first M-rated game for language, which we should be really happy for.
Man, you guys don't realize Matt the unedited, and you guys got the script and gave them, and they did everything. I mean,
Yeah, we basically wrote the script with all
we
the
had the
APIs.
APIs, and we were just sitting there listening to them to the point where my stomach hurt. I was laughing so hard at some of the
It's
stuff
funny,
they were saying.
like I have to insert this. This is so non-Iguana related, but like 10 years later, I worked on a pitch at EA doing some animations for Matt and Trey. And my most recent gig was at Zynga. I was working in the same building with Matt and Trey on South Park.
Awesome.
But it was awesome to work on that game. It was.
What is that? All right, you got it. Oh, that's right. Got a
Thanks,
couple more in
Russell.
there. Let's try to get through these
Is
guys.
that answer brief enough for you?
Yeah, we guys, I gotta let you know, I seriously thought we had till 7:30, and we got so much more we wanted to go through, but we're gonna try to run this through because we know you guys are the fans. We want to make sure your questions are answered. Go for it.
I'm Travis. I'm from Nonpareil Institute in Plano, Texas. My question is, can you guys better describe the tool programs you use to make the different parts of the games, from a image drawing program to a level designing program to a sound recording program and stuff like that?
Holy shit, what part of content we have
some
left
of
in
those? I know.
stand?
I know.
Okay, Carlson, I'm gonna literally cut you off in 30 seconds. Go.
Oh, okay. So I was brought on board. My official title was senior hardware engineer, but I did more than just design the hardware. Back in '95, Acclaim came to us and said, "Hey, we've got this other developer that's been working on our quarterback club program, but they've missed a couple milestones. Can you guys take it over?" And finally, they said, "Yeah, sure." But we needed to get it done in about 8 to 9 months. So I was the only guy that had written any Windows programs at all, and so I got stuck with it. But the fun part about this for me.
Next question. All right. Oh, I want to hear the 40 seconds. Do you hear that?
I can give you a brief recap.
Anyway, I wrote a custom Windows program that uploaded the resource to the game on the cartridge. We also had a Photoshop program, and that was basically it. We had a lot of custom tools.
After this is over, just find John, Steve, or Kevin here. Those three can answer that after.
I'm Gene Ward from Corpus Christi, Texas. I just want to thank you guys for the Turok games and all the other games. Me and my friend Lawrence over there spent so much time just screwing around with Turok 1 and screwing around with
So you and your friend Lawrence spent a lot of time screwing around.
How many of you guys worked on Turok Evolution?
I did a little bit.
And I just, particles. I remember reading about it in some game magazine and how great it was going to be and how you could push down trees and kill dinosaurs and how it's going to react. And then I remember playing it and I was like, oh, it was a little disappointing.
Yeah,
I just wondered if there's like a story behind it.
To me, the biggest, and Neil had a lot to say, but for me, the biggest story about that is that the CEO of the company was really banking on saving the company on that product. And he was making a lot of over-the-top promises about it, whatever he had to say to make people want to buy it. And then they printed up enough copies to fulfill his dream sales. And that's why for years that one was still out there in the dollar bins for a long time, because they pulled it.
Fucking design document, I swear to God, it looked like a New York phone book. It was like, we're going to have this wave that's going to tear down this entire town.
I was waiting.
The city on top of it.
It's an Xbox.
I was waiting for my stock options to skyrocket. I couldn't wait for that thing.
What do you got, Neil? I can talk about Turok Evolution a little bit. I have to be diplomatic. So, Turok Evolution, the project had been running for some time, and it was a very troubled game. And I had been working on the South Park franchises. I'd worked on the first South Park game personally to make the game, and then I kind of moved into a producer role for the other games. And they asked me to come over and help out on Evolution because it was a problem. And the biggest problem with the project was, as these guys just mentioned, is the scope of the game was way too big. And when I took a look at the game that the team was attempting to make, it was basically about 4 games worth of content that the team was trying to make. And there was no way that this was possible. So we had to really take a hatchet to the specification of the game and really kind of, cut arms and legs and limbs off to try and kind of, get something ready. But without wanting to waffle, I think that the real answer to your question is the reason that Acclaim failed ultimately was that they did not focus on quality. It wasn't that the team could not deliver a very compelling and brilliant Turok experience with a lot of the features that were promised, and there was a lot of very innovative technology that we created for the product. It was that the team was not given enough time to balance, tune, and really explore those technologies. And that's a really key lesson in game development, is that, it's fine to push the envelope and to create stuff, but unless you reach that tipping point early enough, those wins will be lost. So if you're going to try and do new things in games, try and make sure you're at that point in your production cycle when you're about the middle, so that you have enough time to really leverage those innovations and make something compelling, as opposed to have a lot of loose ends. So Turok Evolution was ultimately a disappointing product for many people, myself included. But I don't feel bad about it in the context of the team. I feel the team was in a way set up to fail by the management, unfortunately.
I thought the poison arrow effects in that game were really cool. And, that was good. Yeah, poison arrows and start bombing, that was great. Whoever thought of that, props.
Weapons ever created in game history is going to be the cerebral bore. Come on, guys, how many times you just sit there and just chuck that thing? And just like, I can remember running back and grabbing it again and going, I'm not going any further. I'm just going to keep chucking that thing on the raptors and watching their brains shoot out of their heads and everything. So, what do you got there, Chief?
My name's Kevin Culbertson, G1 Retrofire 7 from California. Have you guys ever encountered, while making your games, any really nasty roadblocks
And we're
Once or twice.
and
You mean venereal?
Rocky, you're cut off.
I actually left Iguana because of a career roadblock.
Yeah.
There are roadblocks.
Yes.
There are roadblocks everywhere.
I
I
think
literally left the company because somebody was roadblocking me from where I wanted to go.
and I think we sat down, we've talked a couple times, we had some big Skype calls and we were able to talk before this. It really came down to why was Iguana successful, and then Acclaim buys us out and we get this big old checkbook, right? With any checkbook, there's always a payday, right? You always got to pay that off. There's always going to be someone's going to be asking for that. And when you ask like what that huge roadblock was, I seriously think, and I can't think to speak for you guys, it comes down to it was upper management above our command coming down and then not knowing what we were doing within the studio itself. Iguana Entertainment ran great when we were 30 to 40 people. We knew what we were doing. Well, no, we didn't know what we were doing. We knew what the fuck we were doing because we were just going to make this shit as it went along. We seriously were, but it worked because you could count on every single person here to do their job. Every single person showed up that day knowing what they had to do, and they were willing to pick up the slack, or they were willing to jump in when they needed to help the next guy who needed help. And that's what this team, that's why this team was so great. When I look back at my career, and I'm so proud to be able to work with these guys, is every single person in Iguana was willing and able to step up where needed. There wasn't this upper management who had this idea and they had no clue what was going on within the studio and thinking like, hey, guess what, 2 months before ship, and it's not what they were expecting. And I think it really came down to the minute there was more fingers in the pot, is that really starts creating more, problems because we can't execute anymore.
Yeah, and to speak specifically to your question, the roadblocks, it's too big of a question to answer here. You hit daily roadblocks technically and artistically, and you hit big ones, you hit small ones. It's a fact of development, especially what we're doing. I think what separates the really good developers from the less good developers are the people who handle those roadblocks, tackle them, and find a way to get past them. But we bring up the question, we all laugh because, it's the business. It's what you're constantly doing.
There's always roadblocks everywhere.
Well, the biggest roadblock is working for a public company that has shares, and we're creative for the guys who run the show and not creative. They announce at their quarterly earnings meeting, they say the game's going to ship in 2 months, and we're like, okay, you realize the game's not ready to ship in 2 months, and then, so that's the kind of roadblocks we hit, right?
I gotta tell you, man, you were asking what was the worst roadblock. I don't know, there's a shit ton. But I gotta tell you, one of the ones that hit me the hardest was the Columbine shootings. When they said, okay, absolutely nothing in South Park that resembles a gun, resembles school, resembles anything. It was one of the first school shootings that ever happened. And we were all traumatized. We were all like, holy crap, what just happened? Are we responsible? Are we, as making games, making first-person shooters, are we responsible? And we had to go, well, no, these guys are, jerk off nut jobs. So we had to also make a game.
Games got hit by 9/11 the same way. I got a bunch of content pulled. We had shit. We were working on an effect on one of the Might and Magic games where we had a whole world exploding, and as soon as there was an explosion, it was like, nope, no explosions. No explosions in video games for 2 years. That's it.
So are there any roadblocks? Of course, there's always going to be roadblocks.
Still Lieberman was trying to put up as many roadblocks as he could at the time.
If you could have seen what South Park was before Columbine, holy shit, it was hilarious because we had the Turok engine, and we put content in that in like a week. In a week we had it in there, and we were playing it ourselves, but oh my god, we're going to start buying gold Lamborghinis because we're all going to be rich on this, because it was hilarious. And then all of a sudden Columbine hits, and it's like, we're new.
Oh, and Matt and Trey sent us all of the stuff, unedited.
Oh, yeah.
Listening to that stuff, unedited was the funniest shit I've ever heard. No.
It's on a DAT tape we got to DAT
15 years ago, somebody.
I don't know where they are. They're probably in a vault somewhere.
It was all unedited, the script, the entire script, and some of that stuff, I was like, who came up with this, and why would they?
All right, let's get some more questions here. We got 2 left. We're gonna do this.
We're gonna keep going until they actually bring in security. They're gonna drag us out.
Someone bar the back doors.
Fuck the rules.
Okay, so
fuck the police.
Sorry, one more time.
I'm Matthew from San Diego. My question is, what's your opinion on the sort of the Call of Duties, the Assassin's Creeds, the sort of mass-produced factory game development of today, and how does that compare to game development 15 or 20 years ago?
That's a good question.
Well, first of all, what makes you think that Call of Duty or Assassin's Creed are a mass-produced thing? Like, I'm good friends with developers that started those
They're pumping out
I'm friends with the original Call of Duty team, and I'm friends with guys that work on Assassin's Creed.
I'm talking about right now how they're pumping out one a year, and the business guys are saying we're going to pump out one a year until the sales.
Oh, right. Once it gets traction and shit. Well, the opinion, that's just straight up business. That's what's going to pay people's salaries. I mean, Call of Duty was created by Infinity War, which was started by...
One former employee!
No, nobody that was a former employee of Infinity War would clap for that. What happens is those games are started by guys that are just insanely creative and talented game developers, and then the conglomerate that owns or eventually buys the license says, okay, now this has to be a McDonald's franchise, and we're going to crank out the game.
That's the best way, McDonald's.
But that being said, the developers that are actually making the games are passionate game developers that want to make fun projects.
I'd just like to add to that. You know, I have a lot of respect for the Assassin's Creed team up in Montreal and stuff, and those guys working on Watch Dogs and The Division and all those titles. I know a lot of people from Scotland, obviously from Rockstar North. I work with a lot of those guys. And making games of massive scope like that is very, very difficult. I'm sure, as you guys know, there are system-based games, and those sandbox games have systems that touch systems that touch systems, and those are very difficult problems to solve. And it takes hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people to make games of that kind of scope, and even managing a team of that size becomes an enormous challenge to stay on vision. Even if everybody really likes the idea. So, much as those games maybe seem from the outside, milking exercises.
No, I got good news for you guys. Everybody's enjoying the panel and everything like that, so we're gonna let you guys go until 7:30.
The bad news is that it's 7:30 right now. You guys are back
Okay, we better move along. Let's make it quicker this time. Let's make it quicker.
All right.
By the way, thanks to all of you that came out.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
My name is Justin Furlong. I live in Dallas.
Speed it up, come on.
Right. So I noticed that none of you mentioned the other first-person shooter based off a comic book. Did nobody work on Armoring's Project Swarm?
Sorry. It's 2 conference rooms down this way.
That may be an Acclaim game.
No idea.
Is it Acclaim?
Oh.
Is it Acclaim?
The answer is no.
I know how you next. All right. So I'm Brian from Denton, Texas, and first game that I played on PC with like a 3FX voodoo graphics card was Turok. What was that jump like going from like Genesis to the 64 days where it really got like 2D to 3D? What was that whole process for the artists? How did you learn new systems?
Well, I mean, do you guys remember when we got the first 486 in the studio? The 486. That was the one that had everybody could do 3D on. Way before 3D Studio Max. It was just.
You could do it on 386 with the Mac Pro processor.
Yeah.
The short answer is it was very painful. Because everybody at the studio had pixel graphic experience and experience creating animated sprites and laying out sprite sheets and creating levels from kind of little jigsaw pieces to make levels with collision and stuff. And suddenly working with 3D geometry and 3D collision and things of that sort was a huge, it was like going back to school, learning all this stuff. And I'm sure John could speak a little bit about the hardware that was required in the early days to do that, but it was not cheap.
Well, wait, I'd also I want to hear the artists answer it for themselves as well, but that was a big change because it hit everything. It was technology, it was art, it was design, and even at the same time, we were switching to CD-ROM loading as opposed to cartridge. Well, just before that, it took like 5 years of hard learning through that middle of the late 90s period of making that transition.
That transition was happening in art schools at that time, in game community, and people were trying to figure out how did it make sense to study traditional art if you wanted to go into computer art. Were those things two different disciplines? There was one SGI in the school I was going at, and you had to enter your name like 4 days in advance to get like maybe 4 hours a week on it for the entire school. They were very expensive, so when I arrived at Iguana and found out that like all the artists had SGI machines, which I don't even know how much they cost at the time.
I should say not all of the artists. We had the advanced technology group. They all had the new Indigo 2 pizza box computer on their desks, and that was a great cost reduction coming from SGI.
Which long got you that one?
No, I think we were buying those retail. And we also had a really good relationship with Nintendo, so I think we were able to somehow borrow or license a couple of Silicon Graphics Indigo 2 workstations. These things were as high as this table and 19 inches wide and really deep, and I had to have a couple of 20 amp circuits installed in our building, one for each of those things.
Yeah, I mean that was exactly the same tools being used to develop the first Pixar movies at the same time. So it was really cutting bleeding edge technology that people were transitioning into. It was an interesting transition.
And just to add to what Pete's saying, the workstations allowed you to create the content in terms of, I'm going to make this model of a dinosaur. Well, that's great, but that doesn't help us put it in a game. We had to create all of the other bits and pieces as well in terms of, okay, let's get a skeleton in there and let's rig it and let's animate it and then let's take all that data out in a usable format to put it into a game and cut those animation streams up into states. Here's the attack state, here's the run, here's the sniff, here's the look left, the look right, the idles. So there was a tremendous amount of tools and technology, heavy lifting that had to happen to even create just even the most basic pipeline to allow us to create a 3D asset that actually ran in the game and did something, rather than just look like a pretty model on a turntable.
All right, next question.
No, I just wanted to comment about the gaming industry. Everything was 2D at the time, and so that transition into 3D, a lot of people just didn't know how to do it and understand it. I mean, there were all those new games to make and all the new rules of making them. So if you look back at some of those older games, a lot of people were just trying to figure out, okay, how do we make this game fun or enjoyable in a 3D world? We're used to doing 2D stuff, but now it's 3D. And that's, you're adding a whole nother dimension to that. And I think that it threw a lot of people out, it really confused a lot of people in the industry. And a lot of current cell phone small game developers are going to have that same headache when they start trying to go to the 3D stuff that we do.
I think one of the crazy things are too, if you guys think about it, and we were talking about this, we had an interview with IGN earlier, is where we all started. This crew right here working on 2D games to 3D games. Where are we now? If you think about it, I mean, we're right back where we started from.
Yeah,
I would say like
I'm working on sprites again. I was
exactly.
like, fuck, I was doing this 10 years ago. And then I learned all this 3D technology. I was working on like hair dynamics at one point for cinematics, and then now I'm making fucking sprites again.
And that's what it comes down to as well, is just who gives a shit how far the processors can go and the graphics and everything. And it comes down to fun gameplay.
It's about fun fucking games. Come on!
I think that's what the cool thing is right now is a lot of us are working on mobile games right now, and you don't care about how far you're going to press the graphics. It's what is the gameplay. It always comes down to what is the fun factor about it, what's the gameplay. And I feel like we've made it 360 degrees.
We're still trying to push some technical boundaries at midnight right now, but we won't talk about that too much.
Okay, should we get the next question?
All right.
Hi, my name's Jose. I'd like to know.
Hey, Jose!
¿Cómo está, Jose?
Anyways, can you guys talk about your culture? You guys seem like crazy mofos. Are you truly a culture? Is there, if there's one thing I've learned about developers is that they like to party, especially after crunch time.
Especially artists.
I
don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea.
It's crunch time partying, so.
No,
The heaviest partiers aren't here on the panel in those days. Well, it's especially the artists, right? And then when Big Sesh Studios was started up, it gives a sense for the partying that happens, but...
So they don't even know what the hell Big Sesh is.
They may
So
not, but-
we're going to start back there. You got to remember, we were like 19, 20 years old, 25 years old and stuff at the time. And we were coming out of college. Once we're coming out of college, we were coming straight out of jobs. We were making like 19 to 20 grand a year, and all of a sudden you're giving 30 to 50 grand, and you're like, booty, We worked so hard. We were working, people complain these days about work hours. We were working 60 to 80 hours minimal.
Per month.
Per week. 4 months. Yeah, exactly.
And then also at this time, like we were making really decent salaries for that time
At that
zone,
time, yes.
and in Austin, like property and rents were really low, and everybody in the studio had like a rental house or at least a really big and nice apartment.
I remember
So there were parties every weekend. Like
It started on Thursday.
Neil and his ex-girlfriend had like the best parties. Everybody would show up.
Oh,
We'd
the
jam.
Halloween
We'd bring
party.
music. We would
Oh, did you say Halloween party? Don't you wish we had pictures? Wait for it. Keep on talking, please. Talk about yourself.
I remember at Christmas '96, I think we got Christmas Day off, and on Thanksgiving they gave us half a day off. That's what I remember.
The takeaway to your culture question, though, that I would say, because I've been giving this some thought before this panel discussion, is
These guys have not seen me, so they haven't even seen my PowerPoint. So, you gotta understand, we were like
I'm Edward
crazy.
Scissorhands.
Our Halloween parties were off the wall. They were insane. We would go to the houses and we would have, it would be like 4 kegs there, and people would walk in with the most creative, these guys going, I remember that.
Those are great pictures.
Wait, right here, Darren Stubbington, how wrong is that? That's right, and then we got John Carlson, there's Pete Franco, there's Steve and his wife, the hot secretary, like we said. There's Mark Mackin, and right there's Neil. In there, myself, Superman.
John Carlson's up
right
at the door.
here is Scott Brocker. Stand up, Scott. He shows up. We're having a Halloween party.
So
Tell the story how that
I
costume
didn't want
came
to
up.
dress up, and they said you have to. So I went to Walgreens and I said, all right, I'll go as a 7-year-old trick-or-treater.
I do want to.
This happened to be all they had were girls, so I apparently went as Barbie.
I really wish I had got some pictures. There was one year that me and my ex-wife and Tom dressed as the guy. This is when Pulp Fiction first came out, and I literally grew out my beard and I did full blackface. I was Jules from Pulp Fiction. I had the chops thrown out, and John did. Our art department was the full cast from Pulp Fiction. Me and Tom Green were Jules and
what's his face?
What's the other guy's Vince.
Travolta.
Yeah, and we literally got pieces of hamburger, like ground beef, and put them in our hair. And we had, I bought Jerry curl stuff and put it in this fro wig I had. We went to my house and we were spraying blood all over.
People took this shit serious. You didn't show up to an iguana party unless you were ready to go. And I'm so glad you said that, because this is where it's going to go. We got an extra half an hour.
Getting back to your question on the culture.
Hey, yes, I
Hold on. You gotta hear. He was the party master. The John Carlson party where he actually rented skylights that called to the mall.
So, yeah,
and he had a full 70s dance floor built in his backyard.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
it was a small party. Getting back to your question about the culture, coming down from the management at the top, they really required us to work some really long hours, like 80, 100-hour work weeks were not uncommon requirements from management. But we weren't doing the long hours just for our management. We were really doing it more for each other. We were really doing the work.
Well, and that speaks to the point I was trying to finish earlier on, which is, I think one of the principal successes of Iguana and the reasons that the company worked so well was because everyone was a very closely knit family. And, as developers, you work long, hard hours developers and you solve difficult problems, and it can often be very, very stressful, and there can be a lot of friction. But when you have those connections of kinsmanship, I should say, with your co-developers, it helps people to not have meltdowns, and it really kind of becomes this glue that can create brilliance. It creates this space for brilliant work to happen, and I think that was one of the things that was really a big factor in Iguana's success, was that people worked hard together and really partied hard together and really were kin together.
Yeah, and it really helped that, Friday and Saturday nights people had house parties, and we got pissed.
All right, what do you got there?
Yesterday, Craig has said that you no longer under an NDA or anything like that. So what's the best story you couldn't tell us 15, 20 years ago that you had?
I think every single person here could go like, oh, they're cringing right now, going.
Well, somebody mentioned the story about when they had to break into the office and they got arrested.
Who almost got arrested? Steve Bromley, why don't you stand up there?
No names.
Steve's got a good one.
So, you were asking about like crazy stories, and obviously I'm from England.
The Brits.
So actually,
real quick, man, I gotta tell you,
you only got 5 minutes. Hurry the fuck up.
Real quick. I worked with a lot of these guys, and they were all foreigners, and I didn't know shit about foreigners, and they came over. I swear, Mick, I swear, he sounded like Ozzy fucked up.
You guys, let him talk. Got 5 minutes.
Yeah, in fact, and I'm like, hey man, no, I don't swing. No, a smoke. I'm like, okay.
So picture this, right? Fresh from England. It was my friend's birthday. We all worked together, Mark Pritchard, and we all stormed the Iguana building because we had like arcade games. It was about 9 o'clock at night. We'd had a few beers, so we're like, oh, let's go play some arcade games at work. Stormed the building. We put Abergold on. We're dancing away to Abergold, playing NBA Jam and Killer Instinct, and then all of a sudden we hear this massive banging on the door. We're like, what the hell? And we open the door. The next minute, these cops storm in. They grab us all, put us in handcuffs, throw us against the wall, and we're like, what the hell? And they thought we were actually robbing the building. And there were certain things that had to be flushed down the toilet, but luckily we did not get arrested.
Creativity was inspired.
And for the next few years, every time we saw these cops, because they used to patrol the air, we just look at them, they'd look at us, we'd both giggle, and I'm just like,
And the message is, we love Austin PD.
I think one of the great times too is I remember walking into a party, Iguana party in the early days, and I'm not going to say who it was on this panel here, but they walk in with this 4-foot thing that's like this tall, and this really nice velvet bag on it. And I was like, what the fuck, someone brought a bassoon?
Right into the dawn.
They're playing a bassoon in there and opened it up, and it was a 4-foot, anyways. That's how it was actually 6 feet.
Hi, I'm Mishak from New York City, and I was wondering, since you guys made like one of the best sports games ever, which is NBA Jam, was there any like difficulties or like crazy stories about that?
I told you I had a great PowerPoint. I'm telling you guys right now, I have a goal. There's music there and everything.
The thing is that because of the fact that we released NBA Jam on the Super Nintendo and on the Sega Genesis, we didn't develop that game. We didn't make that game. That was, but they didn't make that either. Midway made it. It was a port of the original. It was a port. The people that actually developed that game were from Midway. We didn't design it. We didn't write it. All we did was port it out.
Oh, so it's okay if I just say Brits? Or
was that?
If I just went like Brits, like what you did?
Yeah, it was done in Iguana UK, yeah.
All right, moving on. What do you got there, Captain? Next one.
Yeah, it was made in Iguana UK.
Come on, gotta go fast.
This isn't a Iguana or a Acclaim question specifically, but since you guys are the developers, and I saw your Nintendo 64 development kit that you made, in the future the Xbox One and the PS4, we hear they're basically like AMD processors kind of thing, so the development kits, you want to get out on the platforms as possible. Do you think because it's like, they're essentially the same inside, do you think it's going to benefit PC gamers at the end? Because it doesn't, there's not ports between different hardware, like, the cell processor and the PS3 and the Nintendo and so on.
I can answer that one a little bit. one of the biggest problems in making product across platforms for the last 10 years has been that hardware developers have chosen very esoteric architectures. A good example of that being the PlayStation 3 with the cell, the SPU configurations. It's made it very difficult for developers to create best experiences for those platforms, and to speak to your question, the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 and PCs, it definitely levels the playing field, and it's going to make it a lot easier for developers to create the best quality experience for each of those platforms for the minimum amount of effort.
Do you think publishers will probably keep it on the console for just because one side makes more money, or they don't want piracy to be involved in it or anything like that?
There's any number of business reasons why that may occur. Microsoft, if you are Studio A and you're making this hot shit new game, Microsoft will come with a dump truck full of money to your door and back it up and beep, 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 here comes the money, right? Just so that, that your game is available on their console first. So there's any number of kind of power plays that can happen as to, why a certain game is exclusive on a platform, but it's never usually forever. It's usually just like a one-year window or something like that.
Yeah, the technology is PCs has traditionally, I think, been a little easier to develop for the console. We were primarily a console house.
No, I gotta catch up because we got free shit. And everyone wants free shit. Thank you. Thank you for talking up about this, guys. I can't thank you guys so much for coming out and listening to us jibber jabber. And just let you know, we will be up in the bar on the second floor. Come find us. I'm dead serious.
We accept free drinks.
We will shoot the shit with you guys. There with you. But anyone get a raffle ticket? Did anyone get a raffle ticket? We have some cool shit we're going to kind of give away here real quick here. We've got these are the, Iguana Entertainment actually had a softball team. We fucking sucked. We never won a single game, but we're going to start wrapping up this some stuff. So I'm just going to grab a ticket. Grab a ticket here. What do you got, number?
012329.
And we got a winner? We've got a winner?
You got a winner. Yeah, the whole dev team signed up for it. All right, so we actually got Mark Mackin actually has given up his own personal. He has not worn this. I promise you, no pit stains. So it's a dev team. It's a real Evolution dev team. All was signed on the back here. We got another ticket here. Go ahead there, Captain. Number?
012322.
322. Oh, that's it. All right. Thank God. Hold the Just don't wash it. All right. Actually, we're giving these are some of my personal collections. So this is how much we love you guys. I told Craig I was gonna get some good shit away. This is actually one of the, someone hated it, but we're giving it away anyways. This is one of the Batman PlayStation games, and yeah, it's actually signed. The cover signed in there too. So go ahead and grab one in there. Under this, that's right.
We got 012295.
Fuck yeah!
That's right. It's just winding up on eBay tomorrow anyway. All right, enjoy. Good. All right. I didn't get to show it, like on the PowerPoint we're showing. We shipped a game called Vex, okay? Remember? Really? Anyway. No, Vex is good. Vex is a great game. Vex is a game. Here's the thing, is when we were developing this game, I'm trying to get quick. We were developing this game, it actually started out as Jinx. Okay, it was this cartoon character, and it looks really fucking familiar. Who does that look like? The PlayStation at the time. Yeah, Ratchet and Clank maybe? What's that character's name though? Anyway, so we went to E3 and we saw that Sony was coming out Jack and Daxter, and it was exactly the same thing. Okay, hey, 6 months later we were pitching to Sony with this. And that's what they call it, Jack and Daxter. It's almost exactly the same character. So this is an actual prototype that we gave to all of the upper management to pitch the game. It's got videos on it. It's not the actual game. It's got videos of what it was. It's got how it was going to act and everything like this. I probably should give this away. I don't give a shit. So remember, my name is Mark Mackin.
012330.
Maybe I'm not giving it away.
Shake it up!
So this is actually one of the Electronic Gaming Monthly. Came out when South Park was coming out about a month later. And they released 4 of these, and each one was a collective cover at the time. And this is fully signed by the team here and everything, so we're going to give this one away as well. What do you got there?
012344.
This was actually in the original box. The only reason we opened it was just to sign it. So it's like free posters and everything else in there. So that's it. All right, guys, I'm serious. I can't thank you guys enough for coming out here. This kind of means a lot to us. I hope you guys enjoyed it.